Hello everyone, welcome for the episode 8 of Timeout from Tamriel. And this week we are going to speak about what we think, how we think that the Elder Scrolls Online is fitting the Elder Scrolls series. It's a subject that you have voted last week. And voila, Deltia, Timeout.
Oh, do I have to go first? I don't want to go for this time. So as far as it fits into the series, I'll kick it off first, but I'm probably in a different boat than everyone. Personally, I like a lot of single player games, and I like the elements of having other people in my games. But at the same time, I think the whole Elder Scrolls premise is that you can almost do everything by yourself. And that really is missing from this game. It's almost you can PvP solo, you can quest and stuff solo, but you can't do dungeons solo. You can't do Dragonstar Arena solo. You can't do trials anywhere remotely close. And I think they're going towards more of a solo-friendly game, and the fact that they're talking about scaling everything, which I do like. But for me, I would actually like it backwards, where there's a little bit more solo ability. Because don't get me wrong, I love multiplayer. I love it. I love playing with my friends. But at some point, sometimes I just want to sit down and I'd like to try Dragonstar Arena solo and have it scale. I'd like to, do some of those challenges alone, because sometimes you just want to play by yourself. As far as like everything else goes, I was skeptical on the story until the very last quest. What I mean is I didn't think the story lived up to the Elder Scrolls name until I completed it. And then I go, yeah, this is Elder Scrolls quality. So for that, the amount of content and stuff that's in the game is daunting. It fits that. It does not fit the typical Elder Scrolls leveling system mechanics and gameplay, which I'm actually a huge, huge fan of this versus the other ones, especially leveling. So a couple points. One, wish there was more solo. Two, I like the amount of content in the story. Three, what was three? Oh yeah, three was the leveling and combat gameplay. I like it like this.
Okay.
So, Sig?
As I mentioned in the last episode, my real experience with the Elder Scrolls is really based out of playing Skyrim and then reading some of the lore from the other names in the franchise. But as far as Elder Scrolls Online fitting in with how I kind of envision the world, I think it does a pretty good job. I mean, obviously it's missing some of the more well-known and well-liked aspects of Elder Scrolls games like the Dark Brotherhood and the Thieves Guild and stuff like that, but we know it's coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things we got to kind of consider is that, like Deltia was mentioning, the storyline, not really being up to snuff until the very end, and the solo aspects and stuff. And I think a lot of that stuff is coming, and it's just something we're, like it or not, we're going to have to kind of deal with as they build out the game, because they have to leave stuff to add in later. For the longevity of the game. So, I can kind of understand why it is the way it is. I think, again, overall, the game, pretty much fits in with the franchise fairly well. And some of the problems that it is suffering, that I don't know how to put this into words. The things that detract it from the franchise are just concessions that we have to make for it to be an online persistent multiplayer world. Well, like you mentioned the soloing and soloing versus group aspect. Solo content is great. I mean, I spend 95% of my time solo running around in this game, but in order for it to be a social game, there has to be the group content out there. And it's just one of those things where it's, what are we going to provide first? And for the first few updates, it was group content. If I remember correctly, when they were talking about Hrothgar and some of those other adventure zones, those are going to be solo zones.
Yeah.
So, it's just, we just got to kind of go with the ebb and flow of how they're releasing content and what type of content it is.
I think they wanted to make group content kind of encouraging people to start a group and to initiate them to grouping, including the people that were not used to group. So that's why they created so much content that push people to group together, like the public dungeon. They say they wanted it not soloable or difficult to solo. The group dungeon that are instances, they don't want to make it soloable. But a lot of people now are asking for having more solo content, but in the same times they need to find a balance and to give a good reason for people to team up because it's a MMO, while still making those players happy to have enough solo content to do. I think they need to keep some group content different than solo content, so add more solo content but not make the group content soloable, if you see what I mean, because otherwise people will lose a little bit the incentive to do this group content because it needs to stay unique.
Yeah, I can see that, but then, on the other hand, if they've offered, let's use Dragon Star as an example. If they offered a group and a solo mode or solo version of Dragon Star Arena, and they had different incentives, you get, different incentives for doing both types, then, you can play both types and have a different outcome both ways.
Yeah, but you need to be careful with that.
Yeah, sure. Well, absolutely. They have to be careful with with everything in terms of balance.
If they want a group game, they got to improve the grouping. I'm sorry, I'm a fanboy, but the way you group in this game, to be completely honest, is the worst in any MMO.
Yeah, it's rough.
I've ever played. I mean, it's not intuitive. It's not inherent. You don't just click a couple buttons and start playing. And especially PvP, that is rough. So, I mean, unless you're stuck with a really good guild, you're just kind of scrambling around looking for group, especially at endgame. And that turned a lot of people off. So if they want to do a group game, make it easy to group, because it's not.
I find that's weird because I find it easy to group.
You're in a guild with friendly people. What if you were not in a guild and you're 65 years old and you've never played an MMO before? Imagine that.
I think that's the point, is exactly that. You need to have people, but we are completely slipping out of the subject slowly.
It happens.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, because the Elder Scrolls Online is not group, and then it goes to this, and the point I'm trying to make is it feels like half-ass group play.
I don't know.
Okay.
That's the problem, is that I'm a very social player, so I have no problem to group. So I have difficulties to put myself in the shoes of someone that have problem to group up. But I find it quite easy. I mean, the community is so friendly. You ask in the trade chat, hello, I would like to do this group, and you find a group super fast. I don't understand people that are complaining that the grouping tools is not working. I'm not using it. It can disappear. No,
Have you
don't
done a
need
trial
that.
yet?
Yes, I've done a trial, but with my guild, of course. I think that
there you go. But that's
the things. You need a guild to do that kind of stuff, and to not have one, it should not be puggable. This is not the kind of thing that you need to do without a group and organization, and you need to push people to try to organize themselves. If you make things too easy, people will not have a good incentive to start to build guilds and communities and stuff like that. So I don't think they are wrong in that, but that's really a vast subject, and yeah. So
this game, going back to the subject, as far as does it fit into Elder Scrolls type stuff, whether it's grouping or not, for me it kind of felt like this game came out and it didn't know what it wanted to be. It didn't know if it wanted to be an MMO, a single player game, or a typical Elder Scrolls game where you just pick it up and just kind of go explore. Then basically everyone said this, I didn't like this, whatever, grouping's bad. And then it really went to the MMO version of it, where they tried to do more trials. They tried to add Dragon Star, group. Dailies came back into this, crafting writs, tons and tons of traditional MMO stuff that we saw. Great. Mm-hmm. Well, now look what they're doing. They're looking at adventure zones. They're looking at Imperial City. They're looking at things to go back to the old Elder Scrolls, looking at instance and soloable things. So the negative point, I guess I'm trying to say is, at some points I feel like the game doesn't know if it's an MMO or a console game or a traditional Elder Scrolls game. It feels like from the direction of the outset, it's kind of gone back and forth.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I will come to my point why I'm a little bit. It's the first time I will start to speak a bit negatively about the Elder Scrolls Online, while I love the game. But for me, I was not imagining Elder Scroll MMOs as it is today. For me, the most important things in the Elder Scroll games is the feeling of adventure, of exploration, and of freedom. And I think that the Elder Scroll Online, at the very start, I have no proof of that, of course, but they started too much to focus on let's make a Dark Age of Camelot in Tamriel with the Alliance War and with three factions, they fight, and we will imagine a world around it. And that, I think it was a mistake, because that was not exactly what the Elder Scrolls fans were wanted to have. Elder Scrolls fans want to explore, they wanted to play in Tamriel. And so for me, there was three mistakes. First, faction. That was my first mistake, in my opinion.
You mean you didn't want any factions?
No faction, unless you want to fight in Cyrodiil. Then you make a quest to have a faction and to fight there. But I think that you should not have faction. You should be free of allegiance, and you start free of allegiance. Second, zones. I find it a mistake too. To have the real feeling of exploration and adventure, you should not have the game separated in zone, like really you feel like zone 1 from 10 to 15, zone 2 from that to that. You should have the incentive of traveling and crossing and everything. Second, third mistake is the level. There should be no level. Like Guild Wars 2, you scale up to the content and you progress in a different way, in a different fashion. There's plenty of different ways to progress your character which are not related to level. So basically, I would have wanted to have my character arriving in Tamriel and to be able to choose where I'm going to travel, what quest I'm going to do. There could have been some quests, for instance, that are traveling quests that tell you get this item in elsewhere, get this item in Skyrim, and get this third item in Daggerfall, and then you complete your quest, and you had to travel all around and discover the world, and plenty of adventure will have arrived to you and stuff like that. That's how I would have envisioned the Elder Scrolls Online.
Yeah, about freedom, you may have a good choice where like you can go wherever you want. Like I thought the Cadwell silver and gold stuff, well, I was disappointed in that because I wanted the ability to choose where I went. I didn't want you had to go to this level, beat the game, then it kind of opened it up or whatever. And to your point, the Dark Age of Camelot theorem, and that might be the topic for next week, but I think you're onto something with the whole, this is what we envisioned it. Basically, a war in Cyrodiil. They want everyone to participate, but not everyone wants to participate. Some people want nothing to do with it, and it feels like that's the major. I mean, even your buffs, like how your character's performances, is tied to something that you might have no incentive, no desire to go do. So I know we're kind of banging on it a little bit, but at the same time, I love the game. It's starting to feel more Elder Scrolls-y to me. But I like the character progression. I think veteran ranks was a terrible idea, though. I think that was a really bad idea. And the skill leveling is kind of similar to Skyrim, so I think people can enjoy that. But Sig, what are your final thoughts about this?
Well, yeah, actually, I mean, you guys have covered everything that I've kind of thought about the game. So I actually want to ask you both a question because you made very similar points, as far as how the game should have been. And the way I'm looking at it is, I mean, obviously some things have to be slightly different just because of the fact that this world, Elder Scrolls Online, hosts thousands of quote-unquote heroes as opposed to Skyrim or Morrowind or whatever that just has that one hero in it. They have to make some concessions to the storyline. So I want to ask you, overall, the balance between meeting what an MMO needs to be and meeting what an Elder Scrolls Online game needs to be, how do you think they did? I mean, the balance? It's going to be wonky, but
are we talking right now, or are we talking?
Yeah, well, I mean, right now, and what we know, the plan, for the game and stuff like that. Is it in a good spot compromise-wise? That's what I want to ask both of you.
I'll go first.
Okay.
I think that, to be completely honest, at the start, no. I think it was not enough MMO, and now it's got enough MMO elements to feel like there's reasons to group up with people, like Aloha said. And the same point, though, I don't think there's any soloable content worth doing. A lot of people, once they either get done with the main story or screw up a character or whatever, they're out. They're done. And there's no replayability for them. So at this point, I like where they're going in directions of some things, not PvP, but in the directions of scaling content and making soloable areas, along with maybe expanding on Dragonstar Arena. I think those are some home runs that they can do to keep a variety of fans happy and entertained and do something in it. So 1 year ago, I would say hell no, but it's coming a long ways.
Yeah. I think that the game is really good right now, but it could have been mind-blowing. We really feel, or at least I really feel, all the concession that they had been forced to make because of the change of realizing what people wanted. And you feel that the direction is not, they didn't have a vision and went straight for it. They went back and forth, like Deltia said. And I think that you feel that very much. The result is like we have a very fun game. I love it. I find it awesome on so many points. But I still feel that it could have been so much more, so much bigger, so much more awesome. Yeah, that's my final point.
All right, enough negatives. So the big topic for this week has been PvP with the changes, and I think that's going to be a really good discussion. So I think we need to talk about PvP, and let's break it up into two things. Aloha, what are the topics for next week?
Well, either we will speak about the Imperial City and the future of PvP, or we are speaking about the aspect of PvP right now. And it will be very interesting because we will have really very different point of view, as we do not have at all the same experience in PvP. I'm the noob.
Yeah, so I got really, really, really strong emotions about this because, I go up and down whether I like PvP in this game or not. Some of you guys haven't played it that much or played it way more than me. So I can't wait to talk about, we're talking about PvP one way or another. So you guys just get to pick which part of it. And we're not talking about builds or Dragon Knights or OP or nothing like that. Big picture stuff.
Yep.
And Sig's getting his feet wet and doing lobby PvP. So we're going to even PvP tonight, maybe Nugget Nation. And it's going to be fun. But people are going to feel some of the problems with it. And
Yep.
So, but Aloha, I think, made it an interesting point, which is it centered Cyrodiil around something that was old, and that's the 3-faction concept. So, I wanted your guys' opinions on that in the comments.
Yep. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.